posted his farewell yesterday to the Las Vegas Raiders. And it's really not a surprise. The moment that he was benched, that's when we knew that this day was coming. They benched him because they wanted to keep him healthy so they could keep their options open for moving on from him. There's his statement. And look, he has said in the past he was either going to play for the Raiders or be golfing. And he meant it at the time. Of course he did. But we all knew that if the Raiders ever cut him loose, that would change his mind. We have the benefit of seeing these career cycles play out. And we know that what a guy believes when he's 25 or 26 and he can't envision ever not being with that team. We've seen plenty of guys who are with a team that they never thought would not want them around, suddenly not want them around. That changes your perspective. And Derek Carr clearly, based on his statement, intends to play elsewhere. That's not a surprise. The question now becomes, Peter, is there any way the Raiders can work out a trade knowing that the way his contract is structured, $40.4 million becomes fully guaranteed on February 15. No trade can happen until the first day of the league year. They can have an unofficial deal in place. The new team can walk away without consequence at any time before both teams turn the key on the activation of the trade when the new league year begins. I continue to believe firmly, I'm very curious about your thoughts on this, I firmly believe they're not going to be able to work out a trade. And at the end of the day, I don't think Derek Carr should do anything to facilitate it because the Raiders are turning their back on him, and I believe his best interests are served by becoming a free agent and going to the market a month before the market opens for the typical unrestricted free agent and doing the best deal possible with one of 4, 5, 6 teams that decide to aggressively chase him.
You know, Mike, this is a real complicated one. Before the year, one of my brilliant predictions was I think Derek Carr is going to be a top 5 quarterback in the NFL. And he was closer to being a bottom 5 quarterback in the NFL. And I think there's going to be a lot of questions about Derek Carr and being in an offense with Josh McDaniels, who obviously coached Tom Brady the majority of his career in New England, and the results there were pretty good, And I think now you look at Derek Carr, particularly his performance down the stretch of the season. Mike, in the month of December, he played 4 games. He was a 54% passer with a negative touchdown to interception ratio. He never threw for over 250 yards in those 4 games. And after the Steelers game, where he threw the 3 picks and did everything he could to allow the Steelers to come back in this game and to win that game, that emotional Franco Harris game. I don't know, Mike. I have, and again, look, Derek Carr clearly has good football left. My question is, does he have the kind of football left that someone is going to pay $40 million a year for? And again, I think that is something that is a huge issue to question when you ask when you ask if there's a team out there, and let's say the first team I think of is the Jets, but when you ask if there's a team out there that's willing to take that risk, the first team that comes to mind is the Jets, not knowing anything, and I'm sure that they don't know anything yet. But then you ask yourself, well, who's going to coach this guy? In Washington, there's no offensive coordinator. With the Jets, there's no offensive coordinator. So, there's all sorts of issues right now with quarterback-needy teams that have to be asked and answered internally before you go after Derek Carr. But the one thing you did say, you're absolutely right. I think he ends up getting released. I don't see any reason why, unless there's some really extenuating circumstances, I don't see any reason why he would agree to help the Raiders trade him after the way it ended in Vegas.
Yeah, I think the very simple approach for Derek Carr is, hey, Raiders, you got two choices to make by February 15. You cut me or you commit to $40.4 million fully guaranteed over the next 2 years. And if you want to screw with me after that, if you want to bench me, if you want to tell me to stay home, not that teams are allowed to do that anymore, but if it's going to be an unpleasant experience, it doesn't matter because I'm still making $40.4 million. If it's unpleasant for me, it's going to be unpleasant for you. And Peter, you made the other point too. What team is going to want to take on this? When we first talked about this, you made this point, and it's an excellent one. What team is going to want to take on a 3-year deal that pays out on average $38.7 million with that $40.4 million fully guaranteed on the way through the door? Who's going to want to do that and give up draft capital? I don't think anyone's going to want to do it because I've had people make this argument to me, well, he should want to be traded because that's the only way he's getting his $40.4 million. Well, folks, don't you realize if a team has to give up a second-round pick or whatever on top of guaranteeing $40.4 million, they'd probably pay more if he was on the open market?
Doesn't make any sense.
That's the reality of it. No. So whatever he's worth, he's worth. And if I were his agent, I'd take full advantage of this opportunity. I'd say to the Raiders, all right, fine, we'll explore the possibility of a trade, and I would use the next few weeks to find out what's out there financially. Who's willing to pay and how much are they willing to pay? You get a head start on what's to come by going through the motions of cooperating with the Raiders, and who knows, maybe there's a chance we decide to, but for now, we're just going to find out who's interested. You mentioned one team that fascinates me, the Commanders. And it fascinates me because his former head coach in Oakland, Jack Del Rio, is still the defensive coordinator there. I'd love to know what Del Rio is going to say to GM Martin Mayhew and head coach Ron Rivera about whether they should sprint to get Derek Carr, walk slowly, go in a different direction. Those are things that Jack Del Rio, even given his habit of periodic loquaciousness, would probably not tell the world. I'd love to know what he's telling them about whether or not they need to go after Derek Carr, because they've become kind of like Colts light in this never-ending quest for a veteran quarterback, and you spin the wheel every year and it lands on a name. This is one you've got some inside information on because you got the guy who coached him for multiple years in Oakland.
I don't know what Jack Del Rio would say about him, but I do think that almost regardless of what he says about him, unless it's something really damaging, and I doubted Derek Carr is a prince of a guy, I think this is going to be based more, Mike, on the tape of the last couple of years rather than on what his coach 4 years ago thought, or however, 5 years ago, I think now, right? His last year with him was 2017. I think that's right. May have been I forget.
Yes.
But I guess
17.
I guess the other part of this is we're going to be in an era this off season, and it's not going to be unprecedented, but we're going to be in a year where I think some very interesting quarterbacks are either going to be available or we don't know whether they're going to be locked into their team. The other guy who I think is very interesting right now, like, let me ask you this question, Mike. If you had your choice, opening day quarterback 2023, Derek Carr, Daniel Jones, who would you take?
Wow. Well, first of all, I don't think Daniel Jones is going to be available, but between the two, probably Daniel Jones, because in today's NFL, the best quarterbacks are the ones who can make plays both with their arms and with their legs.
I would agree with you, and that's why, to me, I think so too. I think somehow, some way, the Giants, maybe with a bridge contract, 3 years, $120 million. I don't know. I have no idea. I'm absolutely throwing crapola at the wall. But I think they're going to get some sort of contract done with Daniel Jones because it makes too much sense. Not only because Daniel Jones has played well, but because he has to think that I can't be any place better than with Brian Daboll. Look, I don't think Mike Kafka is going to get a job this year, a head coaching job. Who knows? Maybe he will. But I don't think he will. And for Daniel Jones 2023, how could you be in a better position than with Brian Daboll and Mike Kafka, and with the purse strings a little bit loosened, knowing that you will have 3 new receivers on your team in 2023. So it won't be, let's go to the Bills practice squad or however they got Isaiah Hudgens. Let's take somebody's